Dr. Zach Bush, my favorite. Welcome to Go Beyond Summit.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Justin.
Oh, you are my favorite person, period. And you're such a legend and one of the most articulate medical doctors I've ever heard speak. And not only just medical doctor, but just period as an orator. You're so concise and knowledgeable on so many different topics. And so we wanted to dive in this EMF radiation, electricity pollution summit. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And no better person to hear from than you, understanding the dynamics of health and seeing so many people die too soon and have so many health challenges. So let's start with the difference between how our body revs and what these invisible pollutants are doing to our body. Can you start just chatting there with us?
Okay, yeah, so the human body is a massive energy machine, and it's invisible to see. It's not visible to the human eye, and so we don't realize that we are about 10,000 times more powerful than the sun, cubic centimeter by cubic centimeter of mitochondria. So the mitochondria are powerhouses within our cells, and a cubic centimeter of mitochondrial density will produce 10,000 times more power than a cubic centimeter of the surface of the sun. So you have a nuclear reactor, amount of energy coming out of every single cell within your body. And so you've got 50 trillion cells, and you multiply all that out, you are radiating a massive amount of energy. In the healthy state, I think we're actually pretty resilient. Like, we can deal with electromagnetic radiation from the sun, from Mother Earth itself, from a lot of our technologies around us and everything else. Where we start to see a huge propensity or vulnerability to all these EMFs that you guys are talking about is when we get damage to our system. And unfortunately, we're seeing an epidemic of this intrinsic, foundational part of our body that would protect us from such the EMF kind of attack that we're under here. And that system is one of fiber optic cables, bizarrely. And so our cells, all 50 trillion, are connected to the cells around them by something called gap junctions. These are clusters of cables. They're literally microscopic tubes that are many thousands of times smaller than the diameter of a human hair. And yet under an electron microscope, we can show the perfect formation of not just one of these tubes, but clusters of tens of thousands of these tubes that make up a gap junction. On the end of every one of those microscopic tubes is a camera aperture that opens and closes to let light energy through from one size cell cytoplasm into an adjacent cell. And so we are manufacturing all of this energy, and we're passing it through these information highways, just like you would through, the biologic or the computer system, like a circuit board on your computer, passing through switches and transit stations, all of this electrical energy. Well, we do that on the biologic level every day, and that's what keeps a healthy human cell a healthy human cell. You have to be receiving information from the cells around you to know what your role in that macro system is.
Love it.
And so you've got 50 trillion cells that are all subspecialized into being not just, a liver cell. It has to be a certain type of a liver cell, and it has to be a certain type of a liver cell that is positioned next to these other special types of liver cells. And so the complexity of the communication that's needed for a cell to even know what its proper identity is all related to this fiber optic light energy traveling from cell to cell. You and I have discussed in our previous interviews, I think, the presence of a typical toxin, which is this Roundup glyphosate compound. This has become the most ubiquitous thing in our water and food system. So 300 million pounds of this will be dumped into the U.S. water systems this year. Worldwide, we're up over many billions of pounds of this stuff being dumped into the water system every year. And so with, anywhere from 2 to 4 billion pounds of this stuff dumped into a planet that is 70% water, you take a water-soluble toxin like glyphosate or Roundup, and you immediately are going to affect the entire ecosystem, every part of the water system. And so 75% of the rainfall in California or in the Midwest or the Mississippi River Valley, all of that is contaminated. 75% of the air they breathe, 75% of the rainfall, all contaminated with this water-soluble toxin. What does that toxin do? Our lab has become expert in demonstrating that this toxin breaks the tight junctions and gap junctions that we just described. The tight junctions are Velcro, holds the cells together. The gap junctions are fiber optic cables that blow between the two. You add glyphosate to that cell structure, and you've blown apart all of that communication network, and those cells become isolated almost instantly. And you can see under the microscope, in 16 minutes from that damage, they start to turn into undifferentiated cancer-like cells.
Wow.
They've lost their signal from the adjacent cells, so they don't know what they're supposed to be. So they become this kind of pluripotent cell that just is supposed to divide and divide until it figures out what its purpose is again. And so we've got this situation where we're dumbing down the human body through fracturing its communication network through a ubiquitous chemical in our diet. And then we expose ourselves to 4G, 5G, all the EMFs, Bluetooth, wireless, all the Wi-Fi systems, all the stuff you're talking about. And that's, I think, where it becomes problematic. If you're already threatened at your cell identity through the electrical transfer, the difficulty of getting that electrical light energy through cell to cell, then you start adding in this very ubiquitous, signaling that's within our biologic frequencies, which is concerning. So 4G, 3G, 5G, all of this is in the vibrational frequency that our cells, and importantly the water within our cells, can respond to. So we're making the water structure within our cells change based on these external EMFs. Why haven't we proven this thing out? Why haven't we done the studies? Why haven't we asked the questions? Well, obviously we've built this massive $17 trillion GDP in this country around the technologies that we're talking about. And so everybody looks at it and says, well, I probably shouldn't use my cell phone. I should probably turn off Wi-Fi. I should probably do this. And nobody does, because it's part of their convenience lifestyle that's been required for them to keep up the pace of life that we expect. Like we expect to be able to text somebody and in 2 seconds get a response. That's amazing that's an expectation. And yet we hold that expectation. I have people all the time upset, you didn't text me back. Well, I was on an airplane for 6 hours. It's amazing amount of expectation, that we have this instant, constant communication through these Wi-Fi systems. And so that I think is kind of the broad brush strokes of what you're getting at.
Oh, definitely. And just to go back between the sun and the body from your start, it's the sun's really unpolarized, right? So it's equally in every direction, where the man-made, it's made differently. It's made to be polarized. So it goes in one direction and then starts causing all this vibrational chaos that opens up these cells and causes that damage. So I think is that true in your perspective?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's digital versus analog, right? And so an analog light wave or an analog radio frequency wave will have all kinds of different frequency resonance changes that can happen in there. But you get down to these digital signals that are very narrow bandwidth that a cell phone will transfer across. Much, much different than the broad bandwidths that I was actually a ham radio operator when I was in the Boy Scouts. And so with ham radio, these amateur radio kind of things with you can set up your own antenna on top of your house, and you can talk all around the world with these old radios. The one I was using was from 1946, and so I had this World War II era radio that I was broadcasting and receiving messages from Australia and talking in real time to people all over the world through this cool little radio station that I could set up. In that analog world of kind of radio and radio frequency, I could tune in. I had to tune in to the right bandwidth. There was quite a bit of leeway. It's this manual thing where I'm just got the big dial and I'm trying to hit the right bandwidth. But I could move it over a little bit and I could still hear the person, and their voice was just a little higher pitched or a little bit off, and then I could dial it right in. But there was a lot of bandwidth that I could travel across. With a cell phone, you're at these fractional elements of these microwave frequencies that are so fine-tuned that there is no variation possible. It has to be on, or either you hear it or you don't hear it, right? And so you can hear this on your cell phone even. Like when somebody starts to drop out because they're in poor reception, their voice doesn't get distorted. They're either on or they're off. Like you heard a word and then you didn't hear a word. You heard a word and you didn't hear a word. In the non-digital radio frequency world, you'll actually hear the tonal shift because you're catching parts of the wave in your antenna systems and everything else. And so, that's maybe way too detailed for your question there, but I would say definitely we now have these very artificial things. Another example of this is incandescent lights. Incandescent lights that we all have grown up with at Edison and, kind of invented or brought to market. Edison's incandescent bulb glows like a candle. It's a heated filament, and it's emitting light energy. Blue is expressed in incandescent light. LED lights are very narrow. Fortunately, most of the LEDs that are put into hotel rooms worldwide now are required by law to be in your hotel room are blue spectrum LEDs with a very tiny fraction of that whole bandwidth. And there's a lot of concern right now that that's toxic to our eyes, to the neurologic system. It imbalances our autonomic nervous system. We start losing the balance of the parasympathetic to sympathetic just because we have this overwhelming presence of this weird blue light spectrum. The LED displays on your computers and cell phones, blue spectrum. There's actually an app that you guys should all know about. It's it's free. For your cell phone, it's Iris Mini. For your laptop or desktop, it's Iris, not the Iris Mini. The website, I believe, is iristech.com. And you can download it for free. It will take the blues out. And Iris Mini just pulls a few of the blues out of there, and you can't really adapt it. But on your laptop or your desktop, you can set for yourself how much blue you want to take out. Right. My screen looks orange. Like when you turn on my laptop, people will see it and be like, "What's wrong with your computer screen?" If I see a normal computer screen for now, or if I turn mine off to make a PowerPoint presentation, my eyes are so immediately irritated by that blue light. And so if you detox your body from the blues, you're going to have a really good sense of when it comes on. You're going to walk into a room and be like, "Oh my gosh, the lighting in here is horrible. It must be blue light." And then make that transition. I've got colleagues now that are carrying incandescent light bulbs with them, so when they get to the hotel room, they can screw in their own incandescent light bulbs for the night.
Wow.
Unfortunately, the technology's gotten to the point that now that LED lights are required by law, you can no longer screw in and unscrew the new fixtures. They're now, got these weird plugs for the LEDs to go into. So we are losing the ability to even modulate the electrical magnetic output of a bulb, let alone the cell phones and everything else. Like, we are living in a completely artificial, digitized fraction of nature.
You know what? It's so true. And I can really resonate with that in a lot of ways. I was flying back into Orange County and flew in at night, and I'm looking at the horizon, at all the lights, just all the lighted city. And I used to fly in and absolutely marvel at how beautiful it was. And I was looking out the window going, "Oh my goodness, the lights are all they're all blue. I can't even enjoy this. They're so bright." And it wasn't that soothing night, city light vision.
It doesn't look like Paris anymore. Yeah, totally.
Unbelievable. So that's so true. Now let's go dive into real quick on fiber optic. Is fiber optic like hardwiring it? You talked about it, the body being really similar to that. Is that a great solution for people, just to hardwire? They have faster internet connection. There's none of that EMF stuff going in, and as long as you don't have a router.
Way better. All right. Yeah, I hope the fiber optic craze comes in and replaces the whole system, right? We need to stop with the router somehow or another. Like the routers are definitely a huge problem. Just turn off your router before you go to bed. You can put it on a timer, plug one of those simple $10 timers that you can get, stick your plug for your router into that, make sure it turns off by 11 p.m. or whatever, and get your routers turned off so that when you're trying to sleep and your brain is trying to go through these very eloquent sleep cycles that rely on theta waves, which are super important. This is what professional meditators are trying to mimic, is this theta wave, delta wave kind of environment of deep sleep and restoration. And so if you're bombarding the brain with EMFs all night long, the ability for you to get into that restorative, reparative sleep is going to be marginalized severely. So turn off the routers as often as you can. Keep the routers out of your bedroom for sure. Every 100 feet or every 10 feet really that you're further away from a router, the less the toxicity. I was just at a big conference speaking to Lyme population, and Lyme patients are classic for being extremely EMF sensitive, and so they're very, very aware of the whole issue at hand here. But there was a really great biologic electrician there, which is cool that we have people that identify themselves as biologic electricians now, but they go into houses and help detox the house to identify where your main problems are. And this is kind of, if there's any silver lining on the story of 5G, 5G is scary. So 5G is everything we just talked about, getting tinier and tinier and tinier as far as the things. That is, another 1,000-fold worse with 5G. And so you got these tiny little things that have to be propagated a lot more frequently. So 4G, you can be 7 miles from your cell phone tower. 5G, you can only be a couple hundred yards from your transmitter, which means that, in fact, interestingly, at this conference, the husband of the wife who's putting on this conference runs AT&T's wireless R&D division. And so it's fascinating to go out to dinner with this guy and listen from his perspective. He's fully aware that this stuff is toxic, but he's like, there is no way to stop this industry. Like, there's no way that AT&T can decide not to participate in the 5G thing and not go completely bankrupt, because they're going to be, the nature of competition is such that. So why are people not doing the biologic studies? Because we double the speed of computers and transmission of frequencies every 18 months now. It's even faster than 2 years. And so we've got this speed at which industry has to keep up with the competition. There's no time for them to say, oh, let's put it all on hold and do a 2-year study on rates of autism in children in buildings. You kidding me? We can't pause for like 30 minutes. At any rate, it's a daunting reality.
Hang on 1 second. Okay, you're back on. We actually lost you for a second.
Okay.
Somehow the internet connection, and that's great. Like, I'm okay with it. like you got interrupted during a pivotal point, but hey, to
What
me,
was the last?
like, when is, like, literally, when is enough going to be enough for us? Like does everyone have to die for it to be like, hey, we can't have all this stuff? I mean, we have 5G going up across from schools and on, churches, and to me, there's going to be a major rift between commerce, and it's really going to damper commerce, because intuitively people aren't going to go where cell towers are. So developers need to understand the difference between commerce, if they're in the business of retail and selling products or leasing space, to being in the cell tower business just for a few extra grand. And our cities, and our government's supposed to protect us. So how are these 1996 procedural levels, and like clearly written levels on electricity, dirty electricity, and then radio frequencies? People know what these levels are. How are we even allowed to build homes, and then with having higher levels? And then, I mean, we talked a little bit about the cars, the future of the cars driving up. I mean, this is just, it's unbelievable how every car's going to have 5G in it. It's not an entertainment vehicle. You're driving from place to place. But then the other part is, in the next 2 years, our government wants to make it mandatory in every new house that has to have solar panels. I mean, these are massive batteries that cause huge sparking in the line. A Stetzer electric meter meters houses with solar panels off the charts high. I mean, there's so much dirty electricity emitted, and then on top of it, you have a battery right over where you're sleeping. And then if you're driving a battery operated car, you're literally getting fried by a battery underneath you. So when are we going to wake up to like all these technology? Hey, we love it, but we need to have a balance, and we need to know when enough is enough. I mean, I'm in California. Where are you located? You're on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, I'm in Virginia right now, and it's so interesting because I have a place down in Southern California, which is not in a big city. It's in a little tiny town called Encinitas, and then you've got my home in Virginia, which is this rural setting. I'm in the rolling green hills. I can't see my closest neighbor. It's beautiful, idyllic scene. I cannot get cell phone signal inside my house in Virginia, which is exciting. Like, wow, I'm the EMF levels on that property are a fraction of what I exposed to in Southern California. So the answer is when is enough enough? I think the answer is when the consumer wakes up and gets enough education. So as consumers, we can immediately change demand for these technologies. Right now, as consumers, we have been eagerly gobbling up the latest and greatest cell phone, the latest and greatest laptop, the latest and greatest wireless technologies. We are gobbling them up. We're about to have the Internet of Things, the IoT. If you're not familiar with the Internet of Things, you got to look it up. It's a terrifying story where every single device that's going to be put into your home over the next 5 years is going to have a chip in there that's emanating wireless communication to the network, so that your company that just installed a dishwasher in your home knows how many times you run that dishwasher, knows what kind of demand is on the electrical circuits, knows your behavior there. Your toaster is going to be communicating with it. Every single device in your environment is about to have IoT technology in it. And that Internet of Things is terrifying in its prevalence. And, irregardless of the whole privacy issue, which I'm equally as terrified of, like, really, we want all these companies to know what we're doing so they can target our advertising to us. It's just such an invasion of privacy, but it's ultimately, before that, an invasion of our own biology that's about to happen out of consumer demand for the greatest convenience. And so until, as consumers, we start demanding older versions of technology, when we come out and say, you know what, it is worth it for us to have incandescent lights if it means we're healthier as a population. Let's figure out how to produce clean energy instead of saying we have to use LED lights. If we're running electrical networks on coal-burning plants, then we should absolutely do LEDs. But if you're running electrical grids on wind energy and other clean technologies, then you should be using incandescent bulbs. And so, excitingly, by year 2050, so I recently heard a big lecture from one of the guys in the futurist division of Cisco out of Germany. And this is a huge technology company. And he was doing a lecture on what things will look like by 2050. And so in just 30 short years, electricity is expected to be free because there's going to be so much clean, renewable energy on the market. Well, at that point, there is no rationale to using LED lights that undermine human biology. And so, I think the argument for cost savings only makes sense if you're producing dirty energy. And so once we learn how to and put all of our research and development into clean energy, the universe is full of energy. That's the truth. It should not be a dirty process to harness that energy into whatever we feel like we need it to do. So we're channeling our R&D historically in wrong directions. I think it is starting to go in the right direction for clean energy. I absolutely acknowledge, the limitations we have with battery power and everything else you're talking about. But I do feel like it's important stepwise processes towards something that's more hopeful, and I'm hope consumer demand. And I think we saw it with like the Tesla phenomenon, that people were willing to pay a premium for battery powered electrical cars, and the industry had been not willing to do that for a long time. They said, well, we can't have electric cars because the consumer's not willing to pay for it. Well, the consumer got willing to pay for it, and whether or not Tesla can really scale this $35,000 E3 class is yet to be seen, I guess. But it's just a symptom of the fact that consumers are waking up. Consumers do want to be part of the solution. And certainly your summit here on EMF toxicity is a big piece of this. If we get the education and we change consumer behavior, we can certainly change the toxicity within our homes. I got my brain short-circuited. Was going to tell you about this biological electrician that just lectured this weekend, but his point was, as terrifying as everything is outside your home that you can't control, the 4G, the 5G, blah, 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 80% of the toxicity that happens to the human body happens inside your home, and you have control over it. So he's very positive. He's very bullish on you can improve your environment by just, number one is your cell phone. You got to get your freaking cell phone away from your head when you're sleeping. And so put the damn thing on airplane mode at least. But think about getting all of the Wi-Fi kind of interactions and cellular frequencies out of your bedroom at very least. And if you do these things, you mentioned Stetzer filters, huge fan of Stetzer filters. I think they really are the gold standard. You can get a kit. The Stetzer filter comes with, you plug it into all the plugs in your house, find where your biggest effect is. You might find that you put a Stetzer filter in really early, really close to your circuit breaker box in your house. You might improve the entire environment of the whole house with a single filter. But a typical house might take 8 or anywhere from 8 to 20 filters, depending on how large the house is, to really get it neutralized. So look at the dirty electricity that's in your wiring systems. The Stetzer filter is an option. There's other ones on the market. Again, I think the gold standard of quality is in the Stetzer world there. So definitely, the gram Stetzer is the unit that we use to measure dirty electricity. And so Dr. Stetzer was there this weekend lecturing and showing his data and everything else. So I would go there. I would go towards the Stetzer filters, or if you feel like you've got an industry equivalent in another brand, that's totally cool too. But do something about the dirty electricity in your environment in addition to cleaning up the Wi-Fi environment, and you'll reduce 80% of your toxicity right there. One of the amazing things to keep in mind when we're talking about EMFs is the phenomenon of a Faraday cage. Faraday cage is what we build around very sensitive electrical equipment in the military and in electronics production and stuff like this. A Faraday cage is a network of wires that can go around a cabinet, or in the case of a manufacturing center, they'll build whole rooms that have Faraday cages around them. And all these fine wires are put at a certain distance, and it's not very, there seems to be gaps, it's not like a solid wall of silver or lead. These are just wires that are going around, and then you ground all those wires, and they create this cage effect where they're blocking electromagnetic frequencies coming from outside, and so you can isolate your electrical equipment inside. You are built with the ultimate Faraday cage. You were designed with the ultimate Faraday cage, and it's called your skin. Your skin works, and as soon as you ground, you are EMF impermeable. The EMFs will stop at the skin, and you will build yourself a Faraday cage. So I sleep on a grounding sheet. If you've got dirty electricity in your house, don't ground it to your outlet, but ground it to the earth itself. Just put a stake, and the kit will come. Most of your grounding sheets have a little 14-inch stake that you push into the ground outside your window, and it has a tiny little wire that can go through the window frame and come and plug into your silver threaded sheet. And now if your foot touches that or a toe touches that, just one part of your skin touches that grounded sheet, you're going to create a Faraday cage around you and sleep better. You're going to sleep better. You're going to have less inflammation in the end, all this stuff, because you're blocking all that external stuff and you're allowing your own emanating energy to become the dominant feature through your sleep patterns. Feel the same way about electric cars. Think about grounding yourself during driving, and you can ground yourself to any metal chassis out there. And so a simple clip to a bolt in the chassis, and then throw on a grounding bracelet or a grounding anklet or whatever you want to wear can do the trick to protect you from batteries and the like. So take advantage of your design. You're built with a Faraday cage. Get it grounded, and things improve. This is why everybody wants to retire to Florida. They don't know this, but the reason they feel better after 2 weeks of hanging out on the beach is they just had bare feet in the sand for 2 weeks, and the EMFs in Miami are horrible. But if your feet are in the sand, your body couldn't care less. And so being in the sand, and Justin, you and I are both surfers. You're a good surfer. I'm a crappy beginning surfer, but it doesn't diminish our mutual joy over it. You don't have to be good at being in the water. Just be in the water.
Right, definitely. No, that's awesome. It's so true. Now, just to go back to the battery thing real quick, and I'm not going to derail for more than 10 seconds, but it's unbelievable to see, like, when I go in with these meters, like you go into a Tesla, they meter off the charts, like on electricity and gas. And so they're really, they're 10 times the allowable levels. And then you're just in there with kids and families and the batteries, and it's pretty scary. And then with the automotive industry, really being connected, about 8 million cars have that internet connectivity with routers in them starting in 2016, and then in 2022, in today's paper, it said it's going up to about 35 million cars are going to be interconnected. So we're having, so to your friend's point, like right now, a lot of it's like at home. I think the future is going to be, a lot of it's going to be outside now, with Google having the bubble up in the sky, and everyone wanting to have the cell towers from the sky coming down. We're going to have all this EMF potentially, just coming down from the atmosphere, and where there's nowhere you're going to be able to be protected. So to me, the future looks a little scary in a lot of ways because of all those. I'm hoping and praying, and with knowledge, people like you, that we can start to really understand levels of challenges that we know when enough is enough, because our body is really sensitive. It is really tuned. It has great healing mechanisms. It needs products like yours, like Restore, to have that baseline health issue to combat, the glyphosate, the other major stressor in our life. And then now we need to understanding of balancing and harmonizing, EMF, rocks.com, like that. Those products are amazing as ground or harmonizing vibration effects. And so we're having all these incredible products, Restore and products for the body, for electricity. But what you're saying and grounding and knowing a balance and putting yourself in the beach and the sand and earthing, and then creating buffers at night or Faraday cages for your products. They're fantastic solutions. So again, thank you so much for joining us on our Go Beyond Summit.
Pleasure. I'm really thrilled to be with all you. Do take faith in your ability to heal, and nature's got all your solutions. So get back plugged in and pick up surfboard or otherwise get out somehow. So thrilled to be with all of you. Thank you, Justin, for having me on.
Thanks, Dr. Zach Bush. Hey, you guys check out his products, restore.com. It's zachbushmd.com to find him.
Restore the number 4 life.com.
Yeah, restore4life.com. Guys, I give it to my daughter all the time. I take it myself. It's fantastic. All the substances out there are just chemically challenged now, and so we need products like that. It's again, it's another God's gift to us to find solutions for that, just like crystals and are for a lot of clearing vibrations from this EMF. So hey, thank you so much. Look forward to getting out on the water with you, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, Dr. Zach.
Thanks, Justin.
Take care.